I am someone who is, or used to be at least, into taking supplements. And it turns out that I have a hypersensitivity to a supplement called coenzyme Q10 that I wasn't aware of at the time that I started taking it. And so around May of last year, which was right around when the pandemic was starting to kind of start, I had started taking coenzyme Q10, and within about a month, I developed severe insomnia. I was sleeping maybe 4 or 5 hours a night at the beginning and couldn't figure out why I was waking up at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning exhausted. And I never made the connection between the supplement and the insomnia at the time. I attributed it to stress and anxiety and the pandemic and some family issues that were going on. And so I fast forward, it started kind of in June when the problem started. By August, my insomnia had gone completely 10 times worse, to where I would lie in bed exhausted, tired, and literally could not fall asleep. And at that time, when I realized that I started feeling like my entire ability to sleep was deteriorating, I started developing severe anxiety around sleep. My sister, I have a family member who had, at the time, was dealing with some severe psychological issues that appeared to be a kind of psychosis or schizophrenia. And in my mind, I started connecting the dots between my sleep issues and her psychosis, thinking, oh no, I'm developing the same problems, except in my case, I have 3 children, I have a wife that I support, I have a law firm that I run. I thought my life was collapsing. And so what started out as a issue of not being able to sleep developed into kind of like an anxiety, panic kind of situation. And then it sort of developed a climax to where I would go to bed and I would start having panic attacks getting into bed. I would lie down and start shaking uncontrollably. And so, it was a very scary time in my life. And I think that was around the time that I reached out to the insomnia clinic. And I had also reached out to an uncle of mine who is a psychiatrist, and I started getting onto benzodiazepines, which, in hindsight was not the right thing to do. But at the time, I didn't realize what the core issue was, which was the supplements. And so I needed a way to sort of force my mind to sleep, because I had accumulated so much of this supplement that my mind literally would not sleep. And so I reached out to the insomnia clinic to get some ideas. I mean, not knowing what the core issue was, some techniques, some thoughts about sleep, and also knowing that I was going on to benzos, to make sure that I had someone experienced that I could talk to about eventually getting off of them, because I was reading a lot about their addictive qualities, and I knew that they were not something I wanted to rely on long term. I viewed them sort of like as a fire extinguisher, get the immediate fire out, but develop better long-term techniques. And so, and it worked, thankfully. So because I didn't have, this was sort of like an acute situation that I was dealing with. I wouldn't say I had a long period of time that I was trying to deal with this before reaching out to the insomnia clinic. But I think the most important sort of insight I'm very much a kind of do-it-yourself kind of guy. I've overcome a lot in life. I'm very self-sufficient. Um, and so I've always kind of had this idea of like, there's no problem that if you don't try hard enough at, you can solve it. And I think the problem with sleep is, trying to sleep can actually make you not sleep in a way. It's one of those few areas where sort of letting go, it's actually more the key than trying harder. And so I think by the time I got to the insomnia clinic, for weeks I had just been, uh, trying different kinds of techniques of buying things, like dimming the lights in my house, buying a special pillow, buying a special shirt that was thinner because I thought maybe it was the heat of the summer that was causing the problem, buying other supplements. I tried dark cherry juice, thinking that, okay, maybe it's a melatonin issue, right? And so, I think the biggest insight that I failed to develop on my own was realizing that these were all kind of reflections of an underlying anxiety that I kept sort of thinking, I need to try harder. If I could just try harder to sleep and put more effort into it, I will make myself sleep. And by the time I got to the kind of the worst phase of my insomnia, I had failed so badly at this trying to sleep aspect that I developed, you could call it performance anxiety, that I was afraid to sleep now. Whereas before, sleep was this kind of thing that happened naturally. I now viewed it as this one thing in my life that no matter how hard I try, my body just won't do it. And so I think the most important thing that I learned initially in talking to the insomnia clinic was the importance of getting past the performance anxiety and understanding sort of like how the sleep cycle actually works and how your brain works, and how in many ways focusing on relaxation and reassurance, and also I actually found the connection with spirituality. I think not that this is kind of a faith-based clinic or anything, but being able to sort of read books, not just sort of pure meditation techniques, but tying it to your own religious beliefs and dependence on bigger picture kind of issues. I found that very helpful as well. But yeah, I think the biggest failure before arriving at the clinic was just thinking that there was something on Amazon or some podcast or some book that I could read that would suddenly solve the problem. That was definitely not the case. So I was simultaneously working with the insomnia clinic and a kind of psychiatric nurse clinic or company or whatever. And there was a very stark contrast in the approaches. The psychiatric nurse was very much about let me find you a pill, let me find you, and also a general practitioner. So the medical field people, the psychiatrist, the psychiatric nurse, and the doctor were very much, well, let's try this pill, or let's try this pill, or let's try this pill. And so by the time I showed up to the insomnia clinic, I had just gotten my prescription for benzodiazepines, and I accepted that I needed them, right? But at the same time, I was very much aware that there was a psychological component to this that went well beyond purely what a pill could solve, right? And so I think what was most different about the insomnia clinic was recognizing the underlying anxiety, the real sort of issues that I was facing. That it was even though we were both not aware that sort of the start of this problem was this coenzyme Q10 supplementation took me, even months later to realize it. I mean, even after I'd stopped seeing the insomnia clinic, it took me that long to realize it was actually the supplement that started it. Um, but the supplement issue fed into this anxiety about, my life's going to fall apart. Am I getting sick? Is there something wrong with my brain? The performance anxiety aspect that kind of snowballed into this crisis. The doctor and the psychiatric nurse didn't touch those areas. It was just, well, let's try this pill, and then to get you off of benzos, let's try this other pill, or we might try antidepressants. I've never been someone funny. I've always been into supplements because they seem kind of natural, right? Like, oh, take vitamin C, and take vitamin D, and take this and that. But when it comes to pharmaceuticals, I've never been a big fan. And so I just knew that, look, I'm taking these benzos right now, but they're super powerful. And I need to get off them. And that was really what I was seeing the Insomnia Clinic for. It sort of helped me, how do I get off of this stuff and address the bigger picture psychological thought processes that were sort of throwing gasoline on the problem. So really the hardest part of my whole ordeal with benzos was the withdrawal period. When I decided that I was getting off of them, I probably withdrew too quickly than I should have, and there were periods of time where I was just sleeping nothing, or at least it felt like I was sleeping nothing. And it became this. There's a term that they use in the benzo world of sort of windows and waves. I think you get waves of symptoms and they kind of go away, and when they go away, you can develop this sort of optimism. Oh, it's over, and then they come back. And it can be very depressing going through those windows and waves, because you keep feeling like, oh, it's finally over, and it's not. And I actually had a significantly longer withdrawal period than a lot of people. So not only was I super sensitive to this supplement that caused the initial problem, but my mind was extremely sensitive to benzos. Most people were surprised for the period of time that I took benzos, the level of insomnia that they caused when I was withdrawing. I think the point that I realized that the Insomnia Clinic was helping a lot was when I kind of sort of came to accept this level of acceptance of this is a process, right? And realizing that these windows and waves of symptoms can make you feel like you're not getting anywhere, but if you sort of zoom out and look at it week to week, or even 2 weeks to 2 weeks, you can see the improvement, and sort of accepting that it's just going to be a long process. It may be much longer than you want it to be, but you can see yourself relaxing. You can see yourself focusing on the positives. And even if another wave is coming, accepting it and focusing your mind, is sort of like going through a marathon or something, right? Like you're going to get there eventually. And so I think that was a big part of the help of the Insomnia Clinic, is again the focus on mental sort of calmness and letting go and accepting the way things are going to happen. As opposed to trying techniques or products or certain things that are going to help, because by the time I got off the benzos, it was just a matter of waiting, right? But during that waiting process, anxieties and worries and all kinds of things can make it harder. And so the big technique that I learned from the clinic and from books that were recommended to me was this sort of the prayer of gratitude, right? And focusing on the good things in your life, and realizing that, if you got through 8 weeks ago, it was a lot harder 8 weeks ago than it is now. And if you got through that, you're going to get through this, And so yeah, so I wouldn't say there was like a moment where I was like, wow, this is working, but it's just sort of like that ease and calmness and sense of security that you develop over time that helps you get through the tough periods. It's sort of it's almost like a mental muscle that was super valuable for me. Um, I no longer take supplements, and shockingly, I no longer drink caffeine. I have gone completely caffeine free, which I haven't done since I was a teenager, right? Which I'm not that old, but I mean, let's call it 20 years ago, right? Um, and I can definitely say that I am a calmer, happier, better human being, better husband, better father. You know, things that you wouldn't expect to get from an insomnia clinic. I mean, yes, I'm sleeping better. I actually still have some withdrawal symptoms of the benzos that interact with foods that I eat and so on, that I'm dealing with, and I've read that it can take a year or two for very sensitive people to get a fully normal sleep architecture from a benzo withdrawal. But even with those symptoms that still kind of come and go sometimes, I'm just happier. You know, I don't feel the need to rely on stimulants. I don't feel the need to, I've fully learned how um, trying to sleep is counterproductive. There's no mental process. There's no meditation you can do. There's no book you can read that's going to make you sleep. It's really just, you know, eat well, keep a good bed routine, learn to identify and deal with your anxieties. Deal with them. Don't suppress them. Don't ruminate on them. And so now my process for going to sleep is more about letting go and accepting that sleep is something that just, if you'll stop thinking about it, it'll happen. Um, you know, one of the most important things for me was learning, like, of all the functions in our body, the one that probably is the strongest and is the hardest to break is your sleep, you know, systems in your brain. I mean, very, very, very rarely does sleep go haywire in normal, healthy people. And so realizing how strong sleep is, how very rare it is for your mind to actually not be able to sleep. You know, that it's all kind of a sense of security and calmness that I've gotten that, you know, that I'll carry on for a long time. But yeah, so it's funny how you know, the issues that can be leading to your insomnia tie to much bigger picture issues about marriage and life and success and career. And so, you know, I probably could say that I got a lot more out of um, the process and the interactions than just, you know, dealing with my sleep, which is great.